Welcome to my channel. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and like. The starship Aurora's blade hung in the frigid void of space, a colossal steel fortress slicing through the darkness like the blade of a war god. Its hull gleamed faintly, reflecting the dim light of distant stars, but inside, the air was thick, suffocating with the hiss of machinery and the faint tang of scorched metal. Commander Voss stood on the bridge, his boots rooted to the floor as if anchoring the ship from tumbling into the abyss. His sharp brown eyes fixed on the control screen, the youthful yet scarred lines of his face tightening with strain. At 28, he was the youngest commander in the Earth Alliance, a title forged in blood and sweat across 3 deep space missions. Sweat plastered his dark, tousled hair to his forehead, dripping in thin streaks down his neck. His tactical armor hugged his frame, its old scratches narrating tales of death defied. He'd seen it all: plasma storms, alien fleets, black holes swallowing light, and he thought he was ready for anything. Today, the universe had other plans. A deafening explosion shattered the silence, jolting Aurora's blade as if struck by a giant's fist. The deck lurched, nearly throwing Ethan off balance. His hands gripped the command chair's edge until his knuckles whitened. The screen blazed red, chaotic numbers and graphs screaming doom. Alarms wailed, shrill and piercing, cutting through the chaos like a wounded beast's cry. "Report!" Ethan roared, his voice overpowering the din, echoing across the bridge with unyielding authority. A young engineer, face pale as death, stumbled from the auxiliary console, hands trembling as he clung to his device. "Cosmic dust cloud!" he shouted, voice cracking with panic. "It punched through the energy shield. Main engines, they're offline." Ethan whipped around to the external display, and what he saw froze the blood in his veins. A massive, crimson cloud alive, pulsating like a storm of blood, hurtled toward them at terrifying speed. Tiny flecks of dust glittered like embers, each a microscopic bullet tearing through the ship's steel hide. Fire erupted on the left wing, crimson sparks spewing from gashes like blood from severed arteries. Metal groaned, mingling with the staccato pops of rupturing hull plates. "All hands to escape pods!" Ethan barked, his voice forged steel, no hesitation. He knew a second's delay meant annihilation in the void. He bolted from the bridge, boots pounding the tilting corridor, black smoke flooding his lungs and stinging his eyes. Shouts from the crew echoed everywhere, blending with the crunch of buckling metal and distant booms from the engine bay. He raced past a scientist crumpled in the hallway, silver hair wild, clutching a research device like it was his lifeline. Ethan grabbed his collar, shoving him into the nearest escape hatch. "Move!" he growled, no time for protest. Ahead, a soldier lay pinned under a fallen beam, eyes wide with terror, pleading silently. Ethan dropped to one knee, heaving the steel with both hands, muscles straining until his armor creaked. "Run!" he yelled as the soldier scrambled free, blood streaking from a torn leg. Ethan didn't pause, charging on, barking at every soul he passed. "Go now, or we're all dead!" Only when the last pod launched, its auxiliary engines whining, green light flickering, did Ethan turn to his own. The ship shuddered violently, debris raining down like hail, clanging against the floor. He leapt into his pod, slamming the hatch shut, fist smashing the launch button. A heartbeat later, Aurora's blade disintegrated behind him in a blinding flare, steel and flame blooming like a dying star before fading to nothing. The pod hurtled through space, spiraling into the atmosphere of an uncharted alien world. Heat seared the hull, turning it cherry red, the shriek of air outside a death knell ringing in his ears. Ethan clenched the straps, nails digging into his palms, teeth grinding until his jaw ached. "Just survive, Ethan," he muttered, voice lost in the roar of descent. Then, a bone-rattling crash obliterated his senses. The pod slammed into the ground, tumbling over jagged black rocks, metal screeching in a symphony of destruction. His dagger flew free, spinning midair before embedding in the floor. Darkness swallowed everything, save the faint hiss of smoke from the wrecked console. Ethan's eyes fluttered open, head spinning, breaths heaving from a bruised chest. He kicked the hatch, warped metal squealing under his boot. Stepping out, His torn armor clanking with each move, he faced an alien wasteland. Razor-sharp mountains stabbed a blood-red sky, as if the planet's lifeblood flowed upward. The air was heavy, acrid with burned metal, scorching his throat with every inhale. He checked his wrist device. The emergency beacon flickered weakly, a dying candle. Comms were a charred tangle of wires. "Come on!" he rasped, voice rough from smoke. "You've clawed out of worse." But deep inside, a cold dread whispered that this was no place he'd escape easily. Ethan couldn't stay still. Heat radiated from the ground, seeping through his boots into his flesh like a silent warning. No water, no food. He knew within hours, this dead world would break him. He slung the emergency pack over his shoulder, its straps scraping his torn armor with a faint clatter. Inside, a small flask of murky water sloshing like a cruel joke, a protein bar, dry and hard as stone, mocking his gnawing hunger, and a plasma pistol, its energy gauge blinking red just enough for a few shots if luck held. He walked, boots striking the cracked earth with hollow thuds, each step a drumbeat of survival. Wind howled through the rocks, carrying an eerie sound, not a natural gust, but a chorus of whispers, overlapping, faint, as if the planet lived and spoke to him. He froze, hand resting on the pistol, thumb brushing its cold metal. His head turned slowly, eyes scanning the shadows between boulders. "Just the wind," he muttered, voice hoarse from lingering smoke. But the hairs on his neck stood up, primal instinct screaming he wasn't alone. He pressed on, legs heavy but relentless, eyes hunting for any sign of life. A narrow ravine loomed ahead, its black, glassy walls closing in like the jaws of a massive beast. Faint moisture gleamed on the stone under the crimson sky, like bloodstains in the dark. Ethan knelt, knee cracking against the ground, scooping murky water from a shallow puddle. It was ice cold, reeking of metal and ash, dripping through his fingers, but he didn't care. It was survival. He raised it to his lips, but a sharp hiss sliced the air, fast and deadly as an invisible blade. Instinct kicked in. He threw up his left hand, catching a thin, glowing metal shaft midair, its burning tip halting inches from his nose. Heat pulsed from it, alive, vibrating in his grip. His heart pounded, blood rushing to his head, eyes locked on the strange object. He looked up, breath ragged through clenched teeth. From the ravine's shadows, a figure emerged, slow and commanding, like a predator spotting prey. It was Kaelith, a warrior of the Vyrn's enigmatic natives of this forsaken world. She matched Ethan's height, standing straight as a spear, her bronze-hued skin glinting like forged metal under the red sky. Her golden eyes blazed not with sunlight's warmth, but a living fire, deep and dangerous, capable of incinerating anyone who dared meet them. Black hair, tied back with a leather strip, framed a sharp face, fierce yet strangely elegant, a mix of savagery and allure. Her light armor shimmered, scales of alien metal interlocking like dragonhide, catching the light in fleeting sparks. She gripped a crescent-shaped bow, etched with ancient runes, and her voice cut through the silence, low and powerful, like a sword through flesh. "You've touched the trace. By our laws, you're now bound to me." Ethan frowned, still clutching the searing metal, feeling its pulse like a heartbeat. "What's the trace?" he asked, suspicion lacing his irritation, breath puffing in short bursts in the stifling heat. Kaelith stepped closer, her boots silent on the ground, a ghost in this wasteland. Her gaze pinned him, curious yet furious, like a beast sizing up an intruder. "It's a warrior's oath among the Vyrns," she said, words hissing through her teeth like a curse. "When an arrow is loosed, whoever catches it becomes an eternal ally or a sworn enemy. You chose your fate when you touched it." Ethan snorted, a dry rasp escaping his throat. He tossed the metal to the ground, red dust billowing around his feet. "I didn't choose anything," he snapped, fists clenching. "My ship crashed, and I'm just trying to survive. I don't have time for your traditions." Kaelith didn't smile. She bent to retrieve the trace, her movements slow, almost ceremonial, hands trembling slightly as if it weighed more than mere metal burdened by meaning he couldn't grasp. "You don't understand," she said, voice dropping to a whisper, heavy with buried pain. "This isn't a game. If I don't acknowledge you, my tribe will exile me, leave me to die under this sky, weaponless, honorless. If I do, you must stand with me in the trial of fire, a rite every Vyrax warrior faces to prove their worth." Ethan met her gaze, unflinching, his voice cold as tempered steel. "I don't care about your rights," he said. "I need to find my crew and get off this damn planet." He turned to leave, but before his foot hit the ground, a tremor shook the earth, a deep, guttural roar rising from below like the planet itself was tearing apart. From the horizon, a colossal shadow loomed, at least 20 meters tall, a living nightmare of metal, the Reaper. Its razor-sharp tendrils lashed the air like steel whips, each strike cracking the ground, its crimson eyes sweeping the wasteland, locking onto them both. Kaelith gripped her bow, facing it head-on, her eyes no longer angry but deadly focused. She turned to Ethan, voice ice-cold, sharp as her missed arrow. "It's here to test me," she said. "And now, because you touched the trace, it'll test you too." Ethan gritted his teeth, legs itching to run, but her gaze, piercing, unyielding, held him like an invisible chain. He had no choice but to fight. Ethan stood frozen, sharp brown eyes locked on the towering monstrosity before him, the Reaper. His heart hammered in his chest, each beat a war drum thundering through his ribs, urging him to flee. But he couldn't. Kaelith's gaze burned into him from the side, her golden eyes a mix of defiance and desperation, a fire blazing its last before guttering out. He didn't want this, didn't want to be dragged into her insane world, but that look, it pierced him, forced him to stand his ground. He clenched his jaw, hand tightening around the plasma pistol at his hip. "Fine," he growled, yanking it free with a swift motion, finger brushing the tiny screen on its side. The energy gauge blinked red less than half, maybe a few shots if he was lucky. "If I'm fighting," he said, eyes hard as steel, "I'm fighting to win." Kaelith nodded, silent, her hands gripping her crescent bow, the red sky glinting off her shimmering armor. They charged into battle, no more words, just the howl of wind and the Reaper's roar echoing across the desolate waste. The Reaper moved faster than anything Ethan had ever faced. A massive metal tendril lashed down, whip-quick, shattering a boulder beside him into red dust. The blast shook the ground, grit stinging his eyes. He rolled clear, body slamming the hard earth, shoulder screaming from the impact. He raised the pistol, squeezing the trigger, a burst of blazing blue shot forth, roaring through the scorching air, striking the creature's leg. Smoke rose from its metal hide, faint scorch marks spreading then fading, unharmed. The Reaper bellowed, a deep, earth-splitting sound, its crimson eyes sweeping over Ethan and Kaelith, marking them as prey for a merciless hunter. Kaelith shouted from across the field, voice cutting through the wind. "It won't stop!" She leapt onto a rock, agile as a panther, bow raised. A glowing red arrow flew, shrieking through the air, embedding in the Reaper's armor. The beast roared in pain, but it didn't falter. It charged, tendrils slashing wildly, tearing the air apart as if to swallow them whole. Ethan didn't fight like Kaelith. She relied on precision, on the tradition of her deadly arrows, but he had no time for finesse. He ran straight into the chaos, boots pounding the ground, red dust swirling around him like a war cloud. A tendril whipped down. He dodged, heat grazing his face by inches. He fired again, plasma searing a tendril, igniting it in blue-white flame before it fell, lifeless as charred wood. Without pause, he leapt onto the Reaper's back, left hand gripping a crevice in its armor, right hand drawing his dagger. The blade plunged into a seam, metal screeching under his strength, sweat streaming down his face in hot rivulets. The beast roared, bucking violently, trying to fling him off like an annoying insect. Ethan gritted his teeth, muscles straining, nails scraping metal to hold on. "You're insane!" Kaelith yelled from below, her voice a mix of shock and fury, but she didn't stop. An arrow flew, striking the Reaper's left eye. Crimson light exploded, sparks spraying like molten blood, yet the beast grew wilder, tendrils thrashing harder, faster, a final surge of rage. Then, amid the chaos, something clicked. As Ethan clung to the Reaper's back, dagger digging deeper, he caught a sound, not a beast's growl, but a mechanical whine, sharp and rhythmic, like a failing engine. He squinted, sweat blurring his vision, and saw it flickering light within, not veins, but cables and circuits beneath the metal shell. "It's not alive!" he shouted down to Kaelith, voice rising over the roar. "It's a machine, there's a power core!" Kaelith froze for a split second, golden eyes widening, but she nodded, surprise giving way to resolve. "Find it!" she barked, leaping to another rock, firing 2 arrows to pin the Reaper down. "I'll hold it!" Ethan climbed higher, each move a battle against gravity and the beast's thrashing. His dagger gouged the armor, chunks of metal raining down like iron hail. Sweat soaked his hair, dripping down his back, but he pressed on. At last, he found it, a pulsing red core, beating like the heart of a death machine, nestled deep in the Reaper's chest. He raised his pistol, hand trembling from exhaustion, but his gaze was ice cold, unwavering. He fired, the final blue bolt screaming into the core. A blinding explosion erupted, white light swallowing everything, the boom echoing like thunder across the wasteland. The Reaper shuddered one last time, tendrils slumping like severed cables, then collapsed, crushing the ground in a thick cloud of red dust. Ethan slid from the wreckage, legs shaking as they hit the earth, collapsing to a sit, breaths heaving through gritted teeth, blood and sweat streaking his dust-caked face. He braced a hand on the ground, chest heaving like it might burst. Kaelith approached, bow lowered, her golden eyes studying him no longer with anger or challenge, but a stunned respect. How did you know?" she asked, voice softening to a near whisper in the post-storm silence. Ethan shrugged, a faint smirk tugging his lips, though his breathing still rattled. "I guess," he rasped. "Lucky it worked." But in his mind, a spark ignited. If this was a machine, who built it, and why? Night fell like a heavy shroud, the blood-red sky of this alien world fading to an abyssal black, swallowing all light save for faint, pulsing streaks like the veins of a dying giant. Ethan sat by a small fire, its flames crackling over scraps of metal from his escape pod, casting an orange glow across his face, highlighting the faint scars and red dust caked into his skin. Kaelith sat opposite, her golden eyes reflecting the fire, deep and brooding, as if peering into a past he couldn't see. The air between them hung thick, wordless, broken only by the wind's howl through the rocks, carrying the scent of scorched metal and the night's biting chill. She broke the silence, her voice low and mournful, a whisper from the earth itself. "The trial of fire isn't just a rite," she said, hands tightening around the bough across her lap, fingers tracing its ancient carvings. "It's an old Vyrax prophecy. Legends say an outsider would one day catch the trace like you did and lead us through the final flame. A calamity will burn everything if we're not ready." She looked up, her gaze piercing him, sharp yet laden with pain. "But my tribe doesn't believe in you. They think you're a harbinger of ruin, a sky-fallen wretch here to torch our world." Ethan stared into the flames, their tongues licking the air as if desperate to escape their fate. Her words echoed in his skull, but he shoved them aside, refusing to let them take root. "I don't care about prophecies," he said, voice firm, cold as cooled steel. He leaned forward, hands on his knees, eyes locking with hers. "I just want to survive and find my crew. That's all that matters." But then, a faint light blinked on his wrist, the emergency beacon, once dead, now flaring bright. Rescue was near. He shot to his feet, pulse quickening, fingers brushing the device to confirm the signal. Numbers danced on the tiny screen, a ship entering the atmosphere. He turned to go, but Kaelith's hand clamped his wrist, yanking him back. Her grip was iron, nails digging into his skin through torn armor. "If you leave now," she said, voice trembling not from fear, but an inner struggle he couldn't fathom, "I'll be branded a traitor. My tribe will cast me out, leave me to die under this sky." She released him, her eyes flickering between hope and despair. "Stay, and you'll face them all, warriors who won't change, who trust only spears and arrows." Ethan opened his mouth to reply, but before the words could escape, the darkness shattered with heavy footsteps and the clang of metal. Vyrax warriors emerged from the night, their towering forms ghostly under the fire's weak glow, like specters of war rising from the earth. Leading them was Torvak, A hulking brute with shoulders like boulders, arms crisscrossed with scars mapping old battles. His cropped gray hair framed a face hard as stone, cold eyes sweeping over Ethan and Kaelith. He gripped a long spear, its glowing red tip humming with bloodlust. Kaelith, he rumbled, voice deep and resonant, drowning the wind. You've broken our laws. This outsider doesn't belong. Hand him over, or die with him. The warriors behind him raised weapons, spears, bows, knives, metal glinting red under the sky, a wall of death. Kaelith sprang up, bow in hand, body taut as a drawn string, ready to fight. But Ethan raised a hand to stop her, stepping forward, eyes fixed on Torvak. Let me talk, he whispered to her, voice low but resolute. He stood tall, boots planted firm, facing the giant without flinching. I don't want war, he said, calm but forceful, each word a hammer strike. I didn't come to destroy you. I helped Kaelith kill a Reaper. I can help you face whatever's next. Kill me, and you'll lose an ally. When my team arrives, they won't forgive my death here. Torvak sneered, a dry crack of sound like breaking stone. Ally? He spat, spear trembling. You're a weakling fallen from the sky, a rat among wolves. Then, a surprise. From behind Torvak, a smaller figure stepped forward, hands shaking but eyes steady. It was Vyrn, a young warrior, face still boyish, yet his gaze burned with unshakable faith. He's right, Torvak, Vyrn said, voice quavering but firm, cutting through the silence. I saw him fight. He killed the Reaper not with our strength, but his way. If it's a machine, who made it? Maybe he knows what we don't. The warriors murmured, eyes shifting between Torvak and Vyrn, but Torvak whirled, fury flaring like fire in the dark. Shut it, kid! He roared, spear raised to strike. He didn't get the chance. A deafening boom erupted from afar, shaking the ground, red dust swirling like a storm. From the horizon loomed another shadow, larger, faster than the first Reaper. Its glowing tendrils lashed like fiery whips, each strike splitting the earth. Torvak staggered back, cold eyes widening in shock, his warriors faltering, weapons trembling. Ethan turned to Kaelith, voice sharp, no hesitation. How many more are there? Kaelith shook her head, face paling under the fire's faint light, golden eyes dimming with rare fear. No one knows, she whispered, voice breaking. They rise from the earth, like a curse we can't outrun. No time for debate. The second Reaper charged, its colossal silhouette slicing through the night like a black blade, glowing tendrils slashing wildly, tearing the air with shrieks of terror. The ground quaked under its weight, red dust choking the fading firelight. Ethan stood firm, boots dug into the earth, eyes scanning the beast with icy focus. He shouted, voice overpowering the Reaper's roar. Find the power core! That's the weak spot! Without waiting, he charged, boots hammering the ground, dust swirling around him like a war shroud. His plasma pistol whined, spitting blue bolts at the creature's legs. Smoke rose from its metal shell, scorch marks spreading, but it barely slowed. Kaelith darted aside, bow raised, a red arrow streaking from the string, embedding in a shoulder seam. A small blast sparked, but the Reaper stood tall. Torvak, face twisted with reluctance, roared, driving his glowing spear into a lashing tendril. The blade severed it in a burst of metal, shards flying like iron rain. The Vyrax warriors behind him howled, joining the fray, weapons high, eyes wild under the black sky. Ethan didn't stop. He rolled from another tendril strike, rocks scraping his face raw. He sprang up, breath ragged, pistol grip tight despite its blinking red gauge nearly dry. Keep hitting it! He yelled, to no one and everyone, knowing stillness was death. He leapt onto a boulder, launching himself onto the Reaper's back. Hands clung to its jagged armor, nails clawing metal to hold on. The beast bucked, roaring, tendrils thrashing to shake him loose. Sweat streamed down his forehead, stinging his eyes, but he held fast. He drew his dagger, plunging it into a crevice, metal screeching under his force. He climbed higher, each step a war against gravity and the Reaper's fury. Then, a revelation struck. As his dagger dug deeper, a rhythmic red glow pulsed within, not random, but steady, like a machine's heartbeat. Ethan squinted, hand trembling from exhaustion, and saw at a core, not a simple crystal like before, but a metal orb etched with strange runes, identical to those on Kaelith's trace. "Kaelith!" he shouted, voice cutting through the roar. "Look at this! It's tied to your people!" Kaelith heard, golden eyes widening. She leapt onto a nearby rock, then vaulted onto the Reaper beside him. She stared at the core, face paling not with fear, but a pained awe. "That's ancient Vyrax script," she whispered, voice faltering, hand trembling as it brushed the armor like touching a ghost. "From when we ruled the stars. These machines, they're our ancestors' legacy, built to protect, now gone rogue. No time to unpack it." The Reaper bellowed, a sound that shook the air, and lurched, throwing them both to the ground. Ethan rolled, dust coating his face, grabbing Kaelith's shoulder to yank her from a tendril's lethal stab. The metal spike buried into the earth where she'd been, cracking it wide. He panted, eyes darting, spotting his pistol a few meters away drained, useless as burnt wood. But he didn't hesitate. He snatched it, gripped it tight, and hurled it into the exposed core like a desperate grenade. "Take cover!" he yelled, dragging Kaelith behind a rock. A blinding blast erupted, white light engulfing everything, the boom thundering through the night. The Reaper shuddered, tendrils collapsing like cut wires, then crashed, flattening the ground in a red dust cloud. But the explosion didn't end there. The earth split, revealing a deep tunnel, red light pulsing below where dozens more machines glowed, their crimson eyes a sea of fire ready to rise. Ethan sat up, breaths heaving, blood dripping from a cut on his arm, staining the dust red. Torvak emerged from the haze, scarred face smeared with grime, spear trembling from fatigue. He panted, eyes complex no longer disdain, but grudging respect laced with dread. "You saved us," he said, voice a low rumble, each word dragged from deep within. "But if these are our ancestors' machines, the real calamity's just begun." The Vyrax warriors behind him stood silent, eyes shifting between Torvak and the tunnel, weapons quaking. Ethan nodded, rising despite aching legs. He turned to Kaelith, still kneeling by the rock, golden eyes fixed on the tunnel with newfound fear. "You spoke of a final flame," he said, voice hoarse but steady. "Maybe this is it." In his mind, a question flared: if this was Vyrax's legacy, who let it spiral out of control, and why? Ethan stood at the tunnel's edge, boots gripping cracked stone, staring into the abyss below. Red light pulsed from awakening machines, flickering like a beast's heartbeat, casting sharp shadows across his dust-streaked face. Kaelith stood beside him, bow clenched so tight her knuckles whitened, golden eyes dimming with a fear he'd never seen in her. A metallic whine rose from the depths, sharp and steady, like the growl of 100 reapers stirring, awaiting their moment. Wind gusted upward from the tunnel, cold and metallic, reeking of ash, whipping her hair wild. "I don't know how many," Kaelith said, voice trembling, not the warrior's strength, but a whisper facing the incomprehensible. She tilted her head, eyes meeting his, torn between hope and despair. "But if our ancestors made them, there must be a way to stop them." Ethan knelt, prying open his emergency pack, fingers brushing what remained a rock-hard protein bar and his dagger, its steel glinting faintly red. He looked up, brown eyes locked on the tunnel, unwavering. "We go down there," he said, voice resolute, each word a hammer blow. "If we don't, they'll flood the surface, and no one survives, not me, not you, not anyone." Torvak, a few steps away, shook his head, spear humming as if in protest. His massive shoulders tensed, cold eyes boring into Ethan. "You're mad, outsider," he growled, voice a rolling stone. "This isn't a fight, it's death." But before he could argue, Vyrn stepped forward from behind, small hands shaking but eyes ablaze with faith. "He's been right twice," Vyrn said, voice high but firm, echoing through the wind. "He killed reapers twice. I trust him." Torvak spun, fury flashing, but he didn't retort. Time was gone. They descended, Kaelith's rope tied to a jutting rock from her dragon scale armor clinking as she rappelled first. Ethan followed, hands gripping the cord, boots slipping on slick stone, red dust raining into the dark. The tunnel's air was stifling, a metal blanket crushing his lungs, ash burning his throat with every breath. The rope's whine mingled with Torvak and Rin's gasps behind. His feet hit bottom, a faint tremor rippling through his soles, as if the planet raged alive. He looked up, heart racing at the sight, a cavern vast as an ancient arena, black walls etched with faded runes. Hundreds of smaller reapers stood in rows, motionless yet alive, crimson eyes pulsing in sync like an endless fire sea. At the center rose a titan, tall as a building, its jagged armor glinting under the red glow of a massive core in its chest. A mechanical hiss thrummed from it, deep and menacing, like a beast waking. "What is that?" Ethan whispered, voice lost in the expanse. Kaelith stepped forward, fingers brushing the wall's runes, golden eyes wide with dread. "Mother Reaper," she said, voice breaking. "It controls them all, every Reaper, every machine." No one could react. From the shadows behind Mother Reaper, a voice cut through not Vyrex's deep timbre, but a cold, human edge. "Ethan Voss," it hissed, slow and deadly. "You've finally arrived." A figure emerged, steps heavy on the stone, red light glinting off a scarred face and a gleaming metal arm. He wore the tattered Earth Alliance uniform, fabric charred and clinging like a memory of disaster. Scars twisted his face, one eye replaced by a faintly glowing ring, but his cold smile chilled Ethan's blood. "I'm Elias," he said, voice dropping, each word a blade. "Chief Scientist of Aurora's Blade. I survived the crash not by luck, but by wits." He raised his metal arm, gears clicking as fingers flexed. "And I woke Mother Reaper," he continued, smile widening, teeth bared under the red glow. "To rebuild this world my way." Ethan froze, dagger clenched, blood surging to his head. "Elias?" he rasped, disbelief tightening his throat. "You died in the blast. I saw your pod burn." Elias laughed, a dry cackle echoing through the cavern, drowning Mother Reaper's hum. "No, Voss," he said, stepping closer, metal arm raised like a threat. "I fell here, survived the wreckage, and found this treasure, Vyrex's forgotten legacy, buried deep. I woke it, and now it's mine." Kaelith raised her bow, red arrow aimed at Elias, golden eyes blazing fury. "You've defiled our ancestors!" she shouted, voice sharp as a blade. Elias shrugged, gaze sliding over her, cold. "Your ancestors abandoned them," he said, tone flat. "I just claimed what they left and turned it into power." Torvak roared, spear high, but Ethan raised a hand to stop him, eyes locked on Elias. In his mind, a burning question flared: if Elias controlled Mother Reaper, how far had he gone, and what secrets still waited below? Ethan stood rooted, boots nailed to the cavern's cold stone, eyes locked on Elias, a ghost from the past stepping out of shadow. His heart pounded, blood rushing to his head, ears ringing. "Elias?" he growled, disbelief choking him, dagger clenched until his knuckles whitened. "You died in the explosion. I saw your pod disintegrate." Elias laughed, a warped sound scraping from his throat, bouncing off the cavern walls like bent metal. His metal arm rose, gears clacking, reflecting Mother Reaper's red glow in cold streaks. "No, Voss," he said, voice sinking, each word a knife through the stale air. "I crashed here, survived the ruin, and found this place. I learned to control them, these machines." He turned, metal arm pointing at Mother Reaper, its massive core pulsing like a sleeping beast's heart. "They're the ultimate weapon, and I'll use them to rule not just this planet, but the universe." His smile widened, baring teeth under a scarred face, eyes glinting with unhinged zeal. Kaelith stepped forward, boots striking the ground, bow raised, red arrow aimed at Elias. Her golden eyes burned with rage, a living flame ready to consume. "You've betrayed my people!" she shouted, voice a blade's edge trembling through the vast space. Elias shrugged, a slow, disdainful motion, gaze sliding over her. "Your people forgot them long ago," he said, voice flat, emotionless. "I just woke their legacy and made it mine." Ethan gritted his teeth, dagger tight in hand, steel glinting red. He advanced, eyes hard, unflinching. "You're insane, Elias," he said, low but fierce, a declaration of war? "I'll stop you right now." Elias smirked, metal fingers slamming a button on his arm. A guttural roar erupted from Mother Reaper, deep and threatening, shaking the cavern, dust raining from the ceiling. Its core flared, and dozens of smaller Reapers stirred, crimson eyes igniting like a sea of fire reborn. The final battle exploded. Ethan lunged at Elias, dagger clashing against metal arm in a piercing clang, sparks flying like embers. Elias snarled, shoving back, mechanical strength forcing Ethan a step, but he twisted, stabbing into a seam, drawing a hiss of pain. Around them, Kaelith danced between rocks, arrows flying, striking Reaper eyes and joints, each hit a burst of sparks. Torvak bellowed, spears sweeping the air, piercing a Reaper's shell in a metal explosion. But the horde was relentless. A tendril lashed, piercing Rin's shoulder, the young warrior crumpling, blood pooling on the stone. He screamed, voice breaking yet defiant. "Hit the big core! Mother Reaper's heart!" Ethan grappled with Elias, rolling across the stone, dagger and metal arm clashing in a chorus of steel, drowned by Reaper roars. Elias landed a blow, fist slamming Ethan's chest, knocking him back, breath stolen. But he surged forward, grabbing Elias's collar, dragging him down beside Mother Reaper, then leaping onto its back. Hands gripped its jagged shell, nails clawing metal, sweat and blood streaking his face, stinging his eyes. He climbed, dagger in hand, each step a war against gravity and the Titan's thrashing. Elias scrambled below, shouting, voice warped with fury. "Stop, Ethan! Break it, and we all die, you, me, this whole planet!" Ethan ignored him, teeth gritted, eyes locked on the pulsing red core, the machine's beating heart. He raised his dagger, hand shaking from exhaustion, then drove it down, twisting the blade with every ounce left. A white flash erupted, blinding, swallowing the cavern. The Mother Reaper's roar, Elias's scream, the Reaper's blasts. Light seared his eyes, throwing him back, but he clung on. When it faded, silence reigned. Mother Reaper shuddered once, its core dimming, then collapsed, crushing the stone in a red dust cloud. The smaller Reapers froze, eyes fading, falling like lifeless husks. Elias lay still, half buried under a shattered plate, blood trickling from his mouth, metal eye a dying flicker. Ethan slid from the wreckage, legs buckling as he hit the ground, collapsing to a sit, breaths ragged through clenched teeth. Blood dripped from a gash on his forehead, pooling red in the dust, mingling with grime. He braced a hand, fighting to stay upright, head spinning. Kaelith rushed to him, kneeling, hand on his shoulder, golden eyes brimming not with anger or despair, but gratitude and something deeper. "You did it," she said, voice trembling, not from fear, but the weight of the moment. Torvak emerged from the dust, spear propped for support, scarred face smeared with blood and dirt. He met Ethan's gaze, complexity in his eyes, reluctance gone, replaced by silent acknowledgement. He bowed his head, slow voice a low rumble. "I was wrong about you, outsider." Ethan looked up, a faint smirk tugging his lips, breath still uneven. In his mind, a spark flared. What was the cost of this victory, and was it truly over? White light from an Earth Alliance rescue ship tore through the deep black sky, its beams sweeping the wasteland, illuminating Mother Reaper's wreckage, a heap of twisted metal, its core now a cold, gray lump. Ethan stood firm, boots planted in red earth, breath slowing, blending with the wind's howl through jagged peaks. The ship landed nearby, engines roaring, kicking up a dust storm. The hatch opened, a familiar voice cutting through. "Commander Voss, you're alive! Goddamn, we thought you were gone!" It was Sergeant Harris, voice cracking with disbelief. Ethan turned, a faint smile flickering, but he didn't rush forward. Dried blood crusted his forehead, torn armor clanking with each move, yet his eyes shone not for rescue, but for what he'd leave behind. He faced Kaelith, standing tall beside him, unyielding under the fading red sky as the ship's light bathed them. Her golden eyes glowed in the dark, no longer with fury or despair, but a new fire hope. "What now?" Ethan asked, voice rough but warm, hand brushing the dagger at his hip. Kaelith met his gaze, lips pressing tight for a moment, then parting in a smile the first he'd seen, warm as their campfire in the night. "I must rebuild," she said, voice steady, eyes sweeping the ruins then back to him. Not just my tribe, but the truth of our ancestors, what they left, and what we can become. But I can't do it alone. Ethan nodded, extending a calloused hand. I'll come back, he said, eyes locked on hers. This universe is too big, too damn dangerous to face alone. And I think we're a team, a hell of a good one. Kaelith grasped his hand, her grip strong, grounding him. She pulled the trace from her belt, the thin metal shaft, its tip faintly red, and pressed it into his palm. Keep it, she said, voice low, heavy with meaning. It's not just mine anymore. It's yours, ours. Ethan boarded the ship, the trace weighty in his hand like a vow. He looked back, Kaelith standing under the red sky, Torvak and Ryn shoulder bandaged but eyes resolute behind her, shadows of a future. The ship lifted off, engines thundering, but in his mind, this wasn't the end. It was a beginning, a bond between human and Vyrax, a new trace carved among the stars, ready to face the mysteries and dangers lurking in the endless dark.